Hey everybody, this is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to another critique of the week. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm sorry for the slow delay in getting up with that screen up. Twitter has changed its settings a little bit, and I realize what happens. You have to start the screen now before you turn Twitter on, where before it used to be the reverse. The kind of things you have to keep track of everywhere. With YouTube, you have to start the stream before, I don't know, I can't even keep track. There's a certain order you have to do everything. And if you don't do it right, you have to sort of start over and do it the other order. And it's different for each platform. But we're here. We are live. Thanks, everybody. Nate Jacobs here, and Paul Corbeil, and Mark Grinier, Lois Perch, Velamir, Kimberly McNeil. Good to see you all after a week off. And over here on YouTube, we got Kate Morgan, D. Coleman, Warren Navordnik. Hello to all you. Thanks so much for joining us again, even though we took last week off. Always a pleasure to be here and do these critiques of the week. And we'll do a drawing at the end of the show, too, for the next round of participants. But as always, the purpose of these critiques is to give that workshop experience to a few poets who might not have access to that kind of situation. So please do leave the comments, any thoughts you have on the poems, what was working, what wasn't. Please leave them in the chat windows, and the two poets will be able to see you. It's Mia Lirette, and who was the other one? Charlene Cortez. So we have two poets here, and let's jump in to the first poem. This first poem is Mia Lirette, and the poem is Bipolar. So here we go. What is bipolar? It's feeling in high saturation, everything a little too much. Too much of anything is bad, but mania is beyond too much happy. I think I'm going to have to check these camera settings too. Let me see if I can adjust. Let me get a little closer as well. There we go, and then we'll kind of reconfigure the video here. Okay. Right about there looks good, right? It was just a little blurry. I don't want you to have to watch blurry stuff. Okay. Here we go. Let's start again. What is bipolar? It's a feeling in high saturation. Everything a little too much. Too much of anything is bad, but mania is beyond too much happy. Manic. It's the inability to focus on one task, your mind racing in a colorful blur. Or maybe becoming hyper-focused on one task, obsessively working, neglecting food and sleep until it's finished. It's racing thoughts, talking really quickly, the inability to focus on one topic. It's not being able to turn your brain off and sleep. It's staying up for days at a time, or finally getting to bed and waking up only a few hours later with a buzzing mind ready to work. It's suicidal thoughts trying to drown out the depreciating voices. Deprecating, I think I'm supposed to say. It's forgetting any sense of consequence, being reckless, one-way tickets, buying without care, declining credit cards. It's manic spiral, seeing things that aren't there, obsessive paranoia. It's impaired judgment, overdosing on meds, or chopping your hair off to help the headache. It's agitation when someone else gets in your way. Anger when someone tries to stop you. It's feeling on top of the world. You are magic. You can do anything. You can be anyone. It's your shaking hands, legs, wanting to run away. It's your mind running. You're dancing. You're talking, happier than happy, euphoria, and then you crash, depressed. It's isolating yourself from friends and family. It's sleeping all day long, missing classes and all the other obligations. It's being detached, no longer caring. It's sadness so deep it physically hurts. It's being unable to shower, to eat. It's thoughts of ending it, the inability to see any sliver of light. It's alone, living enveloped in a darkness so tragic nobody can see it. It's practicing your smile in your car before you can socialize. It's no longer finding joy in things you previously loved. It's losing all energy and will. It's getting prescribed antidepressants and getting manic instead of getting better. It's months of medication management and lifetime of pills. It's losing a sense of who you are. You were you when you were manic, obsessively working with and chirpy, or are you when you isolate yourself during months of depression? It's wondering if the pills are suppressing who you're meant to be. It's feeling like you're stripped of your identity. It's the inability to trust your judgment and your feelings. It's obsessively noticing mood changes and trying to figure out triggers. It's a 1 in 5 suicide rate. It's a 90% divorce rate. It's a 6th leading cause of disability worldwide. It's lifetime of chaos, and it's exhausting. It's knowing that this initial year of diagnosis is the hardest. It's establishing routine, a healthy lifestyle, talk therapy, and medication. It's knowing that although my life will be a little crazy, it's the only one I have. It's part of me that I will learn to deal with getting better in each passing year. I think that was the whole poem. Yeah. So that's the first poem by Mia Lirette. It is Bipolar. And I feel like this... again, we talk about the public and private poems a lot because some poems are more meant for an audience and some poems are meant more for a person that already knows the situation. And this poem feels to me like a private poem written for the self, really. And there's nothing wrong with that either, just like there's nothing wrong with poems written as like love letters and things like that to certain people who know situations or explanations for what's going on. We're actually interviewing for the next issue of Rattle. I'm going to do an interview next week with James Pennebaker, who is this wonderful psychologist at the University of Texas, who has this whole body of literature about writing as healing and how important it is to use writing, expressive writing as the phrase he uses, to organize your thoughts and find... And basically, I think what it is, I'm going to talk to him about this, but I think what's going on is that the two hemispheres of your brain are sort of out of sync, and writing out your stories and articulating what you're thinking deep down that you haven't articulated to yourself yet has really beneficial effects on health and across the board. And so I kind of feel like that's what's going on here with this poem, because it's really written. There's too much abstraction for an audience to engage with it, which is what happens with private poems. Because if you're giving a poem to an audience who knows the situation and the people involved, then they have all the context, and so you don't need the context, and that's really what the distinction is. But if you're reading poems for strangers, like we want to know your actual story. We have no idea who you are. We have no idea who's speaking this. We don't know anything about the situation or what led up to this diagnosis. And those are the kind of things that pull audiences in. So Kate Bucksbaum says what I'm about to say, which is, I think this poem or any about mental health can only be powerful for others if it's super tight and specific and imagistic. Less, it's exhausting, and more, it's practicing a smile in your car, which is exactly, yeah, there's some great lines here. So let's go through and point out like what's working as a poem that would be for publication. Because what we're doing is trying to find poems for publication, right? Like we want to share poems with strangers. That's what we're doing when we interact with Rattle or any other literary magazine or any other publication venue anywhere. Even if it's just a social media post, you're still interacting with strangers is what you're basically trying to do. And so some lines really work. I think Caitlin pointed out one of the great ones. It's practicing a smile in your car, which has a lot of detail. I also, so we get bipolar as the title. And what is bipolar? It's just unnecessary. Maybe someone had asked that, and the idea is explaining it to them. But here, it's feeling in high saturation, everything a little too much. I think that's a great line. Feeling in high saturation, everything a little too much. It's a great line to start a poem with. But then the poem moves on. Too much of anything is bad, but mania is beyond too much happy. So we go back, we get this interesting line, which is what it would be like to be in high, what it would feel like to be in high saturation, right? Everything a little too much. And then we move on past it to something new, which is another abstraction, which is too much of anything is bad. And then we go through this like sort of list of abstractions, right? But this first line here, it's feeling in high saturation, everything a little too much. That is like the start of a poem. Like that is like the first line of a poem there. And then you can move on to describe the actual situations, the actual feelings with imagistic detail. Because that's what's painting a story in your mind as you're reading. And and making you connect emotionally. So the question here, I think this is a great first line for a poem. I think bipolar could be a fine title, so we know what it's about. And then it's a feeling in high saturation, everything a little too much, the blah, 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 like this happened, and this is what it looked like, and this is how it felt. Very specific to like the actual situation or to an imagined situation that's similar, but some kind of actual concrete details, like the practicing a smile in your car, where there's a car, there's a smile, there are those details that we can connect with. So then the poem goes through there and keeps moving through these abstractions. And when they're specific and they're precise and concrete, they work. So, so that just saying manic, it's the inability to focus on one task, your mind racing in a colorful blur. So we get a colorful blur, which is similar to the saturation. And it kind of, like you can see, maybe this is the thing that you want to be expressing with this poem, is the high saturation, which I think is just a great metaphor that can be extended and drawn out. Like how would it feel to go throughout your whole day? Like what would you see and experience as you go through your day in high saturation? That's a really interesting thing. And then it's interesting that the colorful blur comes up again. Or maybe becoming hyper-focused on one task. So this is just abstraction. We don't connect with it at all. It's racing thoughts, talking really quickly. So if you want to talk about racing thoughts, like paint a scene, tell a little story where thoughts were racing and talking quickly did something, it's not being able to turn your brain off and sleep. So the whole thing is kind of like a show, don't tell type thing. And the reason why we say show, don't tell is because telling just isn't an engaging mode of storytelling. Showing it through scenes and images is the way that stories have power and meaning. So get away from this, for poems. I mean, for yourself, like I said, it's fine to write stuff like this. It's great. It can be really beneficial, like literally on a physiological level. It can be very beneficial to write stuff like this in coming to terms with something difficult. But for something to be shared with an audience of strangers, it has to be more on the lines of this high saturation in the car. Let's see. So let's find some other good lines here. It's staying up for days at a time and finally getting to bed and waking up only a few hours later with a buzzing mind ready to work. So that staying up for days at a time could be something that we could tell a whole story with. The suicidal thoughts. I mean, each of these could be its own poem and story if we were talking about specific experiences. Impaired judgment. So there's so much to tell, agitation when someone gets in your way, anger but these are all abstractions that don't connect. Let's see. I'm trying to find more lines that sort of work on that level of image. And see, most of these are abstract concepts. There's that practicing your smile line, which was a good line. And so, I mean, all of these, like just something as simple as no longer finding joy in the things you love. Like, what did you love that you no longer find joy with? What was it like to experience that thing before when you could find joy? And then what is it now? Like, there's a story in that. And that's the kind of thing that could be told in a poem. Getting prescribed medication. Yeah. So those are the things that, I mean, that's what, these are really interesting, especially this one, the sixth leading cause of disability in the world. I didn't realize that. That's an important detail. But anyway, yeah, so that was kind of a private poem. Let's see what the other one was. The other poem here from Mia Lirette was She. Oh, so before I kind of spaced out and forgot to share comments. So Warren Dvornik says, I like to see a turn of some sort, even something like breaking the its repetition at or near the end to surprise the reader. D. Coleman says, images, maybe looking out the window of a car or a train or a carnival ride for colorful blur would help. Yeah. That's sort of that colorful blur, that high saturation is there's a lot of ways you could use that as a metaphor and push the poem forward that way. Mark Grenier says that perhaps the approach could be objectified in images rather than tell us how it feels. The car line, for instance, doesn't talk about the condition, but shows what happens in the midst of it. Yeah, that's a good way to think of it, thanks. That makes it more accessible. Exactly. Thanks, Mark, for that explanation. Let's see. Marianne Carr says, she's replying to Sharon. Where'd Sharon's comment go? It would be great about a day you had having bipolar disorder. And then Marianne Carr says, or as a description of her trying to relate to someone who is suffering from it. Either they are trying to describe or she is inferring. Yeah, so Karen Harvey says colors are turned up when people are high. Everything is subdued when we feel low. So colors can show, not tell. Yeah, they can. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Ellen Shelley says it's like a diary entry, so I agree it's personal. I don't feel included or invited into the piece. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to talk about a poem like that because it feels like it's doing real psychological work, I think. I think it's a poem that might be important, either whether it's about somebody else that you're trying to come to terms with what their experience is like, or about your own experience with bipolar disorder. It seems like it's processing stuff. It's just not processing stuff in a way that we are invited in. It's a private sort of journey that the poem is on. So let's see if the other poem is similar or different. And I didn't read these ahead of time. I just printed them out. Like my printer still, like, I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but I printed it out like moments ago, so I don't know what's going on here. It's just a surprise. So Mia Lirette, this is she. I am two different people. I am me. I am she. She is an uncontrollable demon. Her only goal to see me rot. You see, at night, I'm serenaded with her deadly whispers of reasons to stay awake, reasons to go to sleep, reasons to get out of bed or never leave. She strips me of my freedom to choose, my freedom to move, my freedom to think. She says the most horrible things, the most unforgettable things, the things I would never say, the things I know I shouldn't say, the things she says. She says these things because she knows they will hurt. Who I want to love, who I want to thrive, who I want to be with. In the back of my mind, she sits waiting for her time, waiting for me to fall out, for me to black out, for me to be weak enough, for her to overpower me. It's in the back of my mind, watching, waiting, hiding, this espionage in myself. In the back of my mind, she sits screaming for nothing, hating for fun, crying for attention, so angry. She sits waiting for her turn of control over my voice, waiting to control my voice, my body, my mind. Before I was controlled. I made my own choices. What came out of my mouth was my choice. If I said it, I meant it. Nobody speaking for me, nobody making decisions for me, nobody acting for me, nobody but I. How I miss those days, those good old days, those easy, genuine days. Before I was a bubbly ball of joy filled with effervescent scintillation. Before I was a vivacious wave of creativity. Before I could go days, weeks, even months with dry eyes. Before I was content with happiness. Then I grew up. And she became me, sitting in the back of my mind. At the end? Oh, no, there's another. Or 2 pages. Okay. Well, we'll keep going. In the back of my mind, she sat, waiting to make her debut. Life with she is lesser than life without. How I wish I could be without. My never-ending obsessive monitoring proves pointless against her agitated pleas. She begs for love. She begs for empathy, for understanding. I know empathy and sympathy. She needs empathizing words, feelings, actions. Sympathy simply scares herself. I hope with everything in my being, she gets the empathy so she deserves, for I cannot forgive her the empathy she so deserves. I cannot give her the empathy she so deserves, for she needs empathy from those who I care for most. Those I care for most, she tears down the most. Those I love the most, she attacks the most. Those who cannot live without, she cannot stand. Those who are the most vital to my survival, surviving. I am simply surviving. I wish I could Instead, I hope to one day live without crumbling under the weight of my demon. She folds me over and over so many times that I am nothing but a black hole, a destructive black hole filled with my love and affection. Condensed so tight I can barely move, so tight like 1,000 rubber bands stretched around the earth. She does this to me. I wish I could stop her from controlling me. I wish I was more powerful, stronger, better. I must form the conception of her perception. I know my perception, the perception I want her to have, but her perception is a cloudy haze to me. She locks it up in a safe made of solid echoes, a chaos so dense it cannot be seen through, for she can only see red, nothing stopping her from hurting herself. As I slowly decay into a heap of expired hope, she admires with a smile full of sadistic joy as I slowly deteriorate into nothingness. She grows more and more powerful in her exhaustive torture as I slowly drown in the suffocating reality. She observes those around me with breathing freely. She observes enviously the people who get to breathe. I can't breathe. Nobody can make me feel like I am less than she. Nobody can make me feel more worthless than she. She tortures me so nobody else can. Nobody can hurt me more than she. And that is the second poem, She, from Mia Lirette. And this poem, it's similar, but also has sort of more to offer, I think. It moves into this sort of private realm a little bit, from time to time. But it also has some very interesting things. So this concept of I am two different people. I am me, I am she. She is an uncontrollable demon. Her only goal is to see me rot. And so this whole concept of being afraid of like this other self lurking within you is very interesting. And those places where it's described, and what she says here is something. And then where was let's see. So here, when she's in the back of my mind, she sits waiting for her time, waiting for me to fall out, for me to black out, for me to be weak enough, for her to overpower me. So that sort of thought, that idea of this other self, like waiting and lurking for its time to strike, is a really powerful metaphor for the bipolar disorder that we were talking about before. And I think that aspect as a concept really works. The poem itself does the same thing where it falls into too much abstraction. So if it's sticking with that, the she and when just she sits, like the fact that that's like that mental aspect is personified enough to imagine it sitting is enough to make the poem sort of come alive in these little sections where that happens. So this poem would work a lot better as a public poem to share with readers, if it's stuck more to that that physicality of the she. So it'd feel concrete again. So it's a similar kind of issue as with the last. One thing to point out too, I think it's interesting, these spaces between the punctuation, sort of an unusual choice. It's kind of interesting. Where the repetition sort of rolls down the page though, like this. That's something that doesn't really work very often at all. And the repetition in general doesn't, repetition works when there's sort of a new tension added to every piece of the repetition. And that's kind of like it's a building of a momentum. But the repetition here doesn't really do that. It feels repetitive instead of like a powerful type of incantation repetition. So I wouldn't bother with these kind of like flourishes of style. I would just stick to the she and describing the she and trying to convey the story of that she that's lurking there, which is really a sort of a profound and powerful sort of concept of what's going on. Let's see. Let me look at some of the other notes. So Nate Jacob says, hopefully he's talking about the right one. Oh, maybe we're up higher. Never mind. And yeah, so Sherry Puff says shorter with fewer abstractions. So the poem too, I think condensing it, like it has this she concept, which is really interesting. And that every time that comes up, I'm sort of re-engaged with the poem. But it only really needs to be a page, maybe. It doesn't need to be this long. It just doesn't have enough substance to fill up that many pages, like enough new substance right now. Maybe it could generate more as it becomes more imagistic based and focusing on that she sitting. But this is the heart of the poem. And this heart of the poem could be a very short poem that just describes she sitting and waiting. And then we could feel like the weight of the she waiting, which is, as a writer, as like an author, that's what you're trying to do, is to make us feel the weight of she sits. So that's the way to think of it. And I think it could be like a 14-line sonnet-like poem, and it would work that way, as long as the she was really illuminated and we felt like a real physical presence of the she, if that makes sense. So that's what I would do with this poem too. Let's see. And Mary Uncar says, I was engaged at the first page and then my interest fell. Yeah, so that's really the situation here too. There were some good things. I'll just point out really quickly. I'll flip through here. There were some things that I thought, where was it picking up? Let's see. So these repetitions are sort of empty of substance. And so this is where Mary Ellen Carr was talking about your interest falling off. Like it's a lack of like the tangible like feeling of things, of actual images in this places that do it. But this crumbling under the weight of my demon is like the heart of it too. And then she folds me. This is what I was looking for. She folds me over and over so many times that I am nothing but a black hole, a destructive black hole, a black hole filled with my love and affection. I think this was a great little section. Really good there. And it's she folds me over and over so many times. Like, because you can see, like, the she, this, like, dark, shadowy figure is how I'm imagining it. Like, folding a person. There's some kind of, like, real, like, movement and experience to that. So I thought that worked really well. And then later, condensed so tight. So we're still talking about this black hole. Condensed so tight that I can barely move. So tight like 1,000 rubber bands stretched around the earth. So this little section right here is kind of its own poem. I mean, this could be its own poem too. Like this black hole, and then so tight like 1,000 rubber bands stretched around the earth. Feel how those images just make the poem so powerful and so more connective than saying, like, I feel this way. Because a description of a feeling is an abstract concept that just doesn't transfer to people. It's like the difference between like talking about a ball and handing me a ball. And so it really worked there. So that is what to focus on, is writing in this style, if it's for publication and for sharing it with an audience of strangers, is this band stretched around the earth. I think I'm finally going to get this. I don't know if you notice, I keep pausing because I have like a sneeze. And it keeps feeling like it's coming and then it doesn't. Okay. But it's half an hour there for the first set. So let's do the second set. And again, we have a lot of pages of poems here. So I'm going to be reading a lot today. But let's see, do you still have people watching? Yeah, 24 people watching. And Lisa Lott Gibson, one more last comment. I like this comment. Lisa Lott Gibson says, it might be interesting to do a collection of poems about she. Yeah, and that concept is really powerful, and it could really work as something to keep going with. So let's see. Okay, but let's go to the second poet now. It's half an hour in. And this is Charlene Cortez. And again, I haven't read these, so I'm looking at it like I would a submission, not really knowing what's going on. So you get to, this is like the, the opening up submittable experience for an editor. Charlene Cortez, A Stolen Piece. And of course, as I have an opening up submittable, I wouldn't see the name. But kingdoms more, kingdoms soar, passing the guards like busting bars, riddles compact from the numbers etched in hollow blocks, the fact of goners. Hit the doors and punch the backs, and hide to navigate the tracks, to boost out parts. Steep lands embed this twisted wanderer. Aches that the leaves and humps, pushing to slouch as I beg the ground not to pound for the plains to switch rounds. Spring declined the measures of luxuriant wands. The caverns feed the infant's boredom. Does hold the dome for loitering dogs, an insatiable nude that climbs for ripe fruits and wildly shouts the beggar's principles here and there, values, then eats apples. The weathering turned the rocks to dust. I must crumple my tasks. Ah, the shallows. On search for walloped hearts, of shortened wage, of weak grips. Oh, I thirst for distance. Lay down barks, lay down, kill the shadows. Oh God, is this the penalty for swindling clemency? Just crumbs for open mouths. Oh, why they broke it. Face down, I crawl to this warmth. They fade. So I kneel for a while, with curved points to the unknown shore. What beauty relies from there? I am bandaged by whipped words. Tell the pounding men of my bare tents. Sigh and sigh, the sand and seaweed caressing the voyager's rest, refresh the bonds of east and west. From the rise and fall of sailors' flow collide the surfers with tentacles of immortality. The commands of tides emerge, a hurricane to blow its treasures with the strakes. Alas, the whales jump, splashing with crystals. I now know the vast, this is my wealth, my true luxury. My kingdom calls me. I shall embrace my prize. I swim the bottomless abyss. They land on my spot with only slacks on sand, and the surface reads, "Ha, I'm rich now." Well, this is interesting. It's sort of an interesting contrast to the last set of poems, because this is very rich with image, even though I have no idea what's going on. But see how that carries you a little farther than knowing what's going on, but not having images. Like, you can really see the way that you sort of move with this poem a little more, even though you're lost, just because you have this sort of grounding of like actual tangible things. Even though you don't know what the things are or what they relate to. So maybe somebody can help me out with the meaning of this poem, because I'm not. A stolen piece. It's interesting too, the rhymes here. I mean, there's sort of a real playfulness to the way the rhymes are operating, but it sort of drops out toward the end. And I wonder if maybe this is sort of a poem that like lost its steam but kept going. I don't know, but I don't understand the meaning of it. So I'm kind of like, it's kind of over my head. So maybe, let's see. Does anybody have any idea what this is about? So Mark A. Grinier says, one of the jobs of poetry is to focus the attention sharply. Too much stuff crammed together reduces the impact of the sharp and intense. It's a good point, thing to point out. Mark, let's see. Okay, so I'm on my own here. I don't know what to make this. A stolen piece. Kingdoms more, kingdoms soar, passing the guards like busting bars. See, there's a nice. I do like the rhyme and the playfulness of these early lines, especially. Riddles compact from the numbers etched in hollow blocks. The fact of goners, like that numbers goners line. A lot of good sounds in this poem. Hit the doors and punch the backs and hide to navigate the tracks to boost out parts. So this is the point. Like so, up until about this point, I'm willing to like not know what's going on. But then it starts to get it like, I don't know, like unsettling or unnerving or something. Or I just want to know, like, let me in, right? A stolen piece. And somebody on the comment said piece, maybe it should be Peace. And that could be, I don't know. I don't know. So Sharon Friday says, I have no idea what is the stolen piece. Adrienne Fissette says, in moments I thought it might be about war. Rainey Campbell says, video gaming, perhaps. So these are the... Marky Grenier says, this poem seems sound-driven, but there's not enough to locate the reader in person, place, feeling. It needs a clearer point or intention to be really public and well-received. Yeah, so I'm I just don't even know what to say. I don't know. I mean, I like the playfulness of the rhymes and the sounds here. Maybe if it was shorter and there was a title that let us in instead of just a stolen piece where we don't know what the piece is, then maybe this could work as like a one-page poem having fun with the sounds, right? Let me do since this is very sound-driven, let's see. Who is that? I'm trying to think of a certain poem that I can share that's very sound-driven. I remember one line from it. Maybe that'll be enough because I can't remember who wrote it. What is... All right, I thought I could pull this up quick. There's a certain one I'm thinking of, though. Who is it by? The line that I thought was it was not it. Let me see. Here it is. It was Glenn Mortzini. So here's a poem by Glenn Mortzini that is very sound-driven, and it plays with images a lot in a similar way that I feel as I'm starting to read this Kingdoms More, Kingdoms Soar, Passing the Guards, right? This is Ars Poetica Harmonica by Glenn Mortzini. And where is the... Here. Okay, Ars Poetica Harmonica. Call me aerophone. Call me free reed. I'm the song's honeycomb, my nostalgia's star-filled or star-flied, toe-tap, steamy, screened in porch. I bay at your blind uncle's fretting banjo as magnolias float bandshells of globed 10-hole notes. And your dead mother on dream's phone, pining as you keep trying. What's wrong? What's wrong? I am wakings hung up on dial tone, the flatline buzz and the blood, and your alarm clock's whooping siren. Call me diatonic, call me chromatic. I am the drunk angel's mouth harp, palm organ, and your hand's trembling steeple, each channel searching the strayed way to your lost God, tongue-shaped, reeds choiring in the wind's church, a field psalm for soldiers in gravel uniform, my black notes, your flags luffing in taps at half-mast. Call me tremulo, tongue-blocked, finger sigh, overbend into glissando, and call me lick and stick, tin sandwich, call me Mississippi sax, drawn, I wheeze, an asthmatic's blues room gasp. Blown, I am the green-throated hollers and the broken beer bottles of your trash adolescence. Fucks, oh baby, that kicks holes in your bedroom's sheetrock. And sucked back, your cheeks swollen wineskins, the bottled walls of hookah's water smoke. I am released, lung-punched bliss, cured in skin and soul I am the breath in your bones. That is entirely driven just by image and language. And once again, that was Glenn Mortzini with Ars Poetica Harmonica. And you can be propelled, not really knowing. I mean, I get the sense as I'm reading this poem here that it's about music. There's a lot of like the banjo and the bluegrass and things like that come up, and the mouth harp and things like that. And so I imagine there's sort of the Mississippi sax, So I'm imagining it's like descriptions of like the way music moves you when it's especially good. And these are all, but they're very imagistic descriptions, very unlocated. Like it's hard to figure out where you are in the poem exactly. It's very abstract, but it still works well enough because the images are so strong and the sounds are so strong, and it doesn't go on for 3 pages either. So I think that might be the kind of thing that was trying to happen with this poem here. And I feel like it worked for a little while, but then I start to get bored. I mean, just for no other way. So steep lands embed the twisted wanderer. Aches the leaves and humps pushing to slouch as I beg the ground not to pound for planes to switch around. So it's still playful. And I still like the sounds, but I'm starting to get too lost. Like in the other poem, in Glenn's poem, there's enough to sort of pull you in, sort of get a sense of where you are, that you don't feel like totally lost and like left alone. But here I don't just get enough of that to keep me interested in just the sounds. So condense it up and make it shorter so that it can hold our attention long enough and give us a little more access, Like, we still don't know what a stolen piece is. If we could know what that stolen piece was, a lot of it might work. So it might be just shorten the poem to the best stanzas and give us a title that situates us. And then maybe that would work. Let's see. Let me see if anyone else has any comments. So D. Coleman says, first stanza, I thought it was about stolen cars and harvesting their parts, but after that I could see that it wasn't. Yeah, I just don't know what it's about. So Kimberly McNeil asked if it's about her innocence. Sherry Pop says, I thought of Ulysses with all the ocean and travel imagery. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Or like, yeah. Let's see. So Attractive Fahey says, I was carried or maybe continue to engage because of the images, sounds, and rhyme, but I didn't get it. I felt lost and surrendered. Yeah, so we just have to be let into a poem like this. Like, we need a little bit more of the background or the context. And the title, like I said, could do a lot of work. Was there anything else that I should say about this one, or should we just move on? Open mouths, where they broke it, face down, I crawls with this warmth. See, like, these are just, like, at this point, these are just sentences that don't really connect for me by the time I get to here. Like, sigh and sigh, my bare tents, the sand and seaweeds, caressing the voyager's rest, fresh bonds. So we do get the sailor and the surfers and the tentacles. We get the capital immortality, which reminds of, like, romantic poets and things. The commands of tides, emerge a hurricane to blow its treasures. And what was a stolen piece? Alas, the whales jump, splashing with crystals. I know now the vast, this is my wealth, my true luxury. My kingdom calls me. I shall embrace my prize. I swim in the bottomless abyss. They land on my spot with only slacks and sand, and the surface reads, now I'm rich. So this is a sense of, like, treasure and maybe stealing a piece of treasure. And maybe that's a metaphor for something. I just can't connect it. But I mean, I should point out the sounds are great in the poem, and the sentence, the control of sentences is really good too. Like the use of different syntaxes to keep us engaged on that level. I think it works. Reading out loud, I have no problem enjoying the sounds of it, which is sort of half the battle in poems a lot of times. I just don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to take home. Let's see what the other poem was, and we'll see if that worked a little better. It's a little shorter. Country Quakes. Here. Country Quakes. And again, this is Charlene Cortez. Outstretched the air, carved by colors, sprinkled wide, singing Vikings, cargo ships, route inclining. The united flags of statutes, hailing and burying, bonkers and buckets, hoops and loops. The clasp of needles to strike the base, to no vent, whilst the other mesh huddle its tent. What brings the majors to this event? 'Tis the dignified, that line straight heads appointed to the triggers with earnest tests. All of thee must mark thy honor, shield each and other's posts, and smash the alien's bowl. The oath which we left, the dolphins behind, the tales that rekindle lullabies from baggages, tailors saluting the servants' urges that cause the immunity to separate. Incoming visitors driving the lenses to enlarge with crossed arms convey the welcome of slashed orders, recipes to pull the colon stools, both to be ambitious as tenures to patrons' troops. A leg for a leg, a tank for a tank, let me sniff the organs in thy chambers to perform the drills of thy cranes, and later block thy meteorites for our projectiles to flee, show the main lands, thy powers, the faith of hawks' chess, whence the heroes throw their protest, desolating kings and queens that envied the score of ages, and snap the system, celebrating the disorders of victories. Whether mine or thine, we cut the strings, whence the prerogatives laugh at the quakes. So again, the same thing. I just have no idea what is actually going on. Although we do have this nautical imagery again. And weirdly, I'm reading my son right now, Treasure Island, which I never read when I was a kid. And we get to the pirate parts, the parts, they're all pirate parts, but where the pirates are talking and they're like, like, shiver me timbers, lay me to that. And they're just talking in this like pirate talk. And we have no idea what they're saying. They're just like sounds coming out of a mouth, which is my mouth because I'm reading it. And, but then the interesting thing is that Jim Hawkins, the main character who's not a pirate, always says that he doesn't understand what they're saying either, which makes me feel better as I'm reading the book. But that's how I feel reading this poem too. Like I'm just saying sounds. And like words are popping in. I don't know what's going on. But we do get more of a consistency to this poem. And there were a few lines that actually jump out that I liked. So let me see. So, which one, where was it? So, I'll stretch the air, carved by color, sprinkle the wide, singing Vikings. So I guess they're singing Vikings, and that's what we're talking about. It is like pirates, cargo ships, root inclining, the ignited flags of statues, hailing and burying, bonkers and buckets, hoops and loops. For some reason, I like the hoops and loops. That was I was looking for. There's just something about that I liked. And then to no vent, whilst the other mesh huddle its tent. What brings the majors to this event? So I love this line. A really good line there. I don't even know what it means, but just the sounds of that, the perfect, the perfect iambics of that, and the rhyme with tent, huddle in its tent. What brings the majors to this event? It's a great line. It's just one great line of poetry, just the sounds of it. What brings the majors to this event? It's fun to say. So I don't know what it means. It says dignified, the lion's straight heads appointed the triggers. I just don't know what's going on. All of thee must mark thy honor. We're reading this, the sort of the thys, the Viking lexicon or whatever. Shields, shield each other. But then we get, and smash the alien's bowl. Like, what is the alien's bowl? Like, that seems important, right? What is that? The oath which we left, the dolphins behind, the tales that rekindle, lullabies from baggages, tailors saluting the servants' urges that cause the immunity to separate. So, I don't know if I have anything. Again, the style of the writing is interesting, and I like it. I like some lines. I like the sounds. There's a control of the rhythms of speech, but I just don't know what's going on. And there's a thing which some people sort of think, which maybe is what is going on here. There's something that this is about that we just don't know. And the thought is like, well, if you knew what this was about, you would get the references and it would all make sense. And so it's just not a poem for you. And like, Tim, you're, as an editor, this just isn't a poem that you can comment on because you don't know the thing that this is about. If this is about a video game or a movie or a history of Vikings doing something, right? It's not anything I know, and I can't relate to the speech. But the thing is that it's your job to make me, as a stranger, understand what you're talking about and not assume that I know what you're talking about. So, that's what storytelling is. And so don't use that as a cop-out, which I think a lot of people do often, that like, well, if you knew what I was writing about, then this would be amazing. You have to explain it to us. Like, you have to assume that we don't know what you're talking about. And there are some things, I don't know, just in general, you have to like let us in and let us know. And so don't let that get in the way of really good writing, because the writing quality is really good. I like the style. It's very unique. Like there's sort of a voice of its own, which I like. There's just there's no access to it as a reader. Sharon Fronte says the mention of event could tell us more. Sherry Pop says baseball. I don't know. I don't even know. Over on YouTube, let's see. So Devin Brock says, a sound poem relies heavily on rhythm. You stumbled a lot through this. Consider Jabberwocky, great rhythmic nonsense that also contains a narrative regardless. Yeah, true about the stumbling, Devin, that's valid. It seems like a poem about a display of military might. Part of the stumbling is I'm trying to I'm not just reading. I'm working so hard to try to understand what it's about that I'm sort of distracted from the sounds as I'm reading too. Let's see. So Devin Brock says, it seems like a poem about a display of military might, but gets lost in its own poesy. Cindy Botha says, these very obscure poems feel a bit self-indulgent because it's so hard to find a way in. In the second poem, what's the point of the capitals? I find it quite distracting. Yeah, I mean, it's written in this sort of old-fashioned type style where, back in Middle English, we capitalized all nouns, and that was just normal. Tis thee and thy contrast with alien in setting the poem in time. It leaves me lost in setting the time. Yeah, I just feel lost, and you have to be inviting your reader in and sharing what you're actually talking about in a way that we can comprehend. And the trick of like more complicated, exotic, or I don't know what the word is, like experimental type poems where they really play with not letting you in is to still let us in at the same time, So if it's written in this sort of weird world of Vikings, but also aliens, it sort of increases the challenge to of how to find a way to keep it sort of strange and interesting to you while also letting us in as readers. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, I think that is all. Yeah. And Marianne Carr says it's very difficult to analyze and make suggestions on multi-page works, lovely to listen to, but hard to interpret when we kind of free move the sheets of paper. Yeah, that is a problem. Maybe I should make a one-page limit for poems, because that is a problem with all these, that you can't look along like you can with the shorter poems and sort of think about it on your own. So maybe that should be a suggestion, at least, that I have in the comments. Oops, I didn't mean to pin that comment. I don't know how to unpin it. But anyway, Attractive Fahey says, it sounds a bit like a mix of science fiction shifting back and forth and Shakespearean drama. A hint of Greek and Viking myth, too. Everything in the mix. I like it, but I felt a bit flooded with image and drama. Maybe less and broadened to let us in. Yeah, I mean, that's just the thing. It just let us in. It's interesting content. And it's clearly interesting writing, too. It's just not written in a way that we can connect with. There's always that, possibility that it's part of a series where we would know what it's about, if we read the whole book. And so that can be an issue too. But I don't know, it feels too distant and not letting us in, which is what all four of these poems kind of did, really. So, anyway, I'll try to show more of the ending, just in case anybody had any comments about it. We have things like this though. Whether mine or thine, right? Like it's a line there, whether mine or thine. It's kind of a nicely sounding line. But who is me and who is thee? Who are we talking about? Like, who is the speaker, and who is the speaker speaking to? Where you can say mine or thine. I don't know. We cut the strings, whence the prerogatives, laughing at the quakes, and I don't know what the quakes are. So there's just so much that I can't follow. It really feels like the Pirates of Treasure Island, and I don't know. Okay, well that is the critique of the week for today, and we are going to do a quick drawing. I'm gonna do things a little different now. I decided how to fix sort of a problem we've been having with these critiques, and that is because we have 125 or so people who signed up and would like to participate, and I went to 2 people so we could sort of move through them more quickly, and an hour's fine to spend on it. So each person gets a half an hour, but there's the problem of like certain poems just sort of have the same thing to say over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a drawing like we always do. And the drawing will pick one poet for one poet for the week. The other poet, I will make a conscious choice of who to pick based on what that poet is. So if it's like a more novice poet, because the thing is with the younger poets, or the more novice poets, like we're just saying the same things usually, which is add more image, let us into the story, tell the story. Don't use poetic flourishes just to sound poetic. We're kind of doing that same type of thing with the more novice poets, which is great because everybody needs to grow and become better writers. But then doing that too much in a row, we end up saying the same thing over and over again. So what I'm going to do is pick I'm going to do this drawing using the randomizer like always. But then I'm going to, okay. Then I'm going to pick a partner for everybody from the drawing. And the partner will be something with a different sort of style, a longer poem or a shorter poem, or if one's formal, I'll make sure the other one isn't formal, that kind of thing. So we'll do two, but one will be like a conscious choice for the sake of the viewership and the experience of participating in the critique of the week. And the original poet that week will be chosen at random. And whatever we get, we get. So there's an item or some mystery and some randomness to it. And there's also some intentionality. So that's what we're going to do for now. And as we always do, let me show you. This is the random.org, the list randomizer. And I'm going to grab this list of however many people it was, paste it in here, and hit randomize. You can't see it, but there's the randomize button. And this is the list. So, Mark Grenier comes up. That'll be cool. Mark Grenier's always here. He's here right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll just do the next 4. Or maybe 5. Maybe I'll do a few. I don't know. But this will be the next couple. So Amelia, Anna King, Richard Grant Wayman, Mark Grenier, Matilda Bray, and Stephen Allen. We'll say that, and then we'll do a drawing after that. So so those will be the next 5 people. And then I will pick, I think Emily Anna King isn't somebody that's on the critique week very often. As a participant, as a commenter. So I think maybe for Emily's next week, I'll go and find somebody who participates all the time. Like I'll pull somebody out that you're here right now, and I'll add you, something like that. So I'm just going to be a little more intentional with the choices here for the second poet every week. And that's how maybe that'll make the show a little better. It is really fun to do. I really enjoy it, but we could always improve. So next week's guest on the Rattlecast, let me just say, or this week I should say, is Maria Mazziati Gillen. Maria is just one of my favorite people in poetry. I just love her. She's so fun to talk to and be around. She's got such a personality, and she's so honest in her poetry. Like, she's a storyteller and tells about her lives, and a great teacher too. She has a long history as the director of SUNY Binghamton's really wonderful creative writing program. She also is the founder of the Patterson, or she's the editor of the Patterson Literary Review and the, what's it called? The Literary Center in Patterson. The Poetry Center, is that what it's called? Whatever it is in Patterson, New Jersey. She is the one who runs that and founded that. And so she just does so much for poetry over the years. And she's the author of how many books? 20-something books. Her newest one is When the Stars Were Still Visible. And that just came out this summer. The prompt for this week was, at the library. So we'll have your poems at the library. We'll have Maria Mazziati Gillen. And that is the early time, which is better for her. And it's my softball playoffs. I don't want to miss my softball tournament, which starts at in the afternoon. So the Rattlecast this week is Sunday, August 8th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific, the old Poets Respond live time. And we'll jump right in with Maria. Then we'll do some open lines and some Poets Respond live and share your poems and your prompt poems, and it'll be a lot of fun. That is Sunday, August 8th, Rattlecast number 105. See you then, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Until then, goodbye.